things would take another turn for the worse. Hello folks, welcome to the Motorsport Detective. I'm Alex Burnham. In this episode we've got an 8mm cine film which has been labelled Indy 500. So I'm going to digitise it and hopefully we've got some classic American racing. Alright, so let's play the film and see what we've got. Instantly we've got single-seaters on a banked track, so pretty certain this must be Indianapolis. Black and yellow car, approval of the colour scheme. Car number 8 there. We only seem to have one car on track at any time. See number 7. I'm wondering whether this might actually be the qualifying for the Indianapolis 500, as they do their sort of shootout for grid positions. Car 7 waving to the crowd there. Now look, the grandstands aren't as packed as they could be, which fits nicely with it possibly being qualifying rather than race day. Briefly, red car, maybe 88. Stands seem to be filling up. Car 89, I think that red one is. And there we have it. We seem to have what looks like it could be qualifying for an Indianapolis 500 race. So let's see if we can find out a bit more about that. So to identify what year of Indianapolis race this might be, I want to try and identify what cars we could see in the footage, and then maybe we can use those to find out which event we're at. So it's really easy for us to get clear shots of cars like this, the number 7 machine. Now I actually think I vaguely recognise this car, mostly due to the front wing. You see, back in the early 1970s, McLaren, who mostly build Formula 1 cars, were also running a lot over in Indianapolis. And they'd built a car for Indianapolis that proved to be quite successful. And this Indianapolis car actually then formed the basis of their later Formula 1 machine, which would go on to win championships with people like James Hunt. And it's quite distinctively this sort of squared off rectangular sort of nose, which is very similar to what's on this number 7 car. So I think we're looking at the early 1970s, and I think this might be one of those McLarens. So I've done a search for 1970 McLaren Indy car. And the cars are looking similar, certainly in that orange McLaren Racing papaya orange, but it's not quite the same car. So what I might do is try 71 IndyCar, 72 IndyCar, and see whether we can narrow down that field a little bit. Now this 1971 McLaren M16 is looking a lot closer to what's in the cine film footage, so perhaps we're getting close. Now we're really getting somewhere. From the 1973 season, not only do we have a car that looks pretty much the same as the one in our film, it's running the same race number, plus if you zoom in on the helmet, the same red, white and blue scheme for Johnny Rutherford seems to be present. So I think this might be it, the 1973 Indianapolis 500. So here's the qualifying order for the 1973 Indianapolis 500. And that car number 7, Johnny Rutherford, is actually our pole sitter, which might be why we saw him in the footage driving along waving to the crowd. We also see the white car number 8 of Bobby Unser. He would line up second for the race alongside Johnny Rutherford. We've also got a shot of Joe Leonard in his number 1 machine in that footage. Plus there was that red number 89 machine of John Martin. That's another McLaren. I found this publicity shot of the front row for that race, and 2 of the cars that made the front row are in our footage. The number 7 and the number 8 car there on the front, joined by number 66. That's Mark Donoghue. Johnny Rutherford in pole is driving that McLaren M16C with an Offenhauser engine, whereas the other 2 cars on the front row were Eagles with Offenhausers. It's also quite easy to see on this picture the similarities between that M16 McLaren for Indianapolis and the M23 that would go on to have Formula 1 success. So as I said, I'm pretty sure we've got qualifying footage as they're running one vehicle at a time. And when we look through the footage, we see our Johnny Rutherford with that car 7 on pole, Bobby Unser with the car number 8 in second place, car 89, which was John Martin, qualified 24th, whereas that number 1 machine of Joe Leonard was down in 29th position. What's quite impressive is that Johnny Rutherford, who took that pole position, had an average lap speed of 198 miles an hour to take that pole position, just shy of the 200 mile an hour barrier. So if this is qualifying, it was probably pole day, which was Saturday, May the 12th in 1973. Unfortunately, pole day had been marred by the death of Art Pollard in an accident in practice before qualifying began in proper. He had crashed his car in turn 1 and he died about an hour later from injuries sustained. Despite this tragedy, the qualifying went ahead with, as we see, Johnny Rutherford taking that pole position. So now let's have a quick look into the 1973 Indianapolis 500 to see how those who are in our footage fared on race day. So the race was due to take place on Monday the 28th, and although they started, things wouldn't go well. Early on, a huge 11-car accident took place, which took out several of the main runners, including Salt Walther, who was severely injured, along with 11 spectators in the crowd who got showered with debris from the accident. The clean-up and the repair from this accident delayed the restart of the race, which gave time for the weather to close in and for rain to delay the restart proper until the following day, the Tuesday. Because they'd only completed about a lap, they decided to restart the race from scratch, giving everyone position back and allowing those caught up in the accident to repair their cars. Disappointingly, it rained again before the race could start properly, and so it was delayed again to the Wednesday. Due to this taking so long to actually start the race, people were already calling this the 72 hours of Indianapolis. So the race finally got going on that Wednesday, and the first 50 odd laps were a normal event, a few caution flags, nothing major. However, on about lap 57, things would take another turn for the worse. One of the drivers, David Earl Savage, or Swede Savage as he was known, was caught up in an accident. After exiting the pits, the car twitched and hit the wall hard. Unfortunately, this had just been refueled, and so a huge fire broke out. While Savage was trapped in the burning car, the emergency services set out to come and help him. Unfortunately, this meant one of the fire trucks was driving down the pit lane when it struck another mechanic. Both Swede Savage and that mechanic would die from their injuries in the following weeks after the race. The debris from Savage's accident would be cleared up and the race would restart for a while at least. But with rain coming in and another red flag thrown, it was once again called off, and this time they called the race and abandoned it not quite at the 500 mile mark. About 330 miles of the full 500 had been run, which is perhaps enough to class it as a full race, but at the time this was the shortest 500 to ever have been run. With multiple fatalities, huge numbers of injuries both to drivers and spectators, plus the stop-start nature of the race, the repeated red flags and the 3 days to actually run the event, which couldn't even reach full distance, it's no wonder that nowadays the 1973 Indy 500 gets known as the cursed race. So quite a dramatic event. But let's have a look at the race results to see where the drivers from our footage ended up. Gordon Johncock would take the win of the event in his Eagle 73 Offenhauser, but top man from our footage is that car number 89 of John Martin. Johnny Rutherford managed to finish 9th. Bobby Unser in car 8 would only manage 100 laps before his conrod let go. This would net him 13th overall. Joe Leonard in that number 1 car would end the race on lap 91 when a wheel hub broke. This gave him 18th position. So quite an unfortunate series of events and not a particularly stellar race in the end. Now, a lot of the problems from that 73 race would lead to changes in the way the Indianapolis was run. The cars were changed slightly, there were modifications made to the track. This slowed things down, made things a bit safer. And to date, Swede Savage's fatal accident is the last at the Indianapolis Speedway in a motorcar race. So the changes made back then were for the better. So an interesting little snippet from that 73 Indianapolis 500, from that cursed event. If you've enjoyed this film, please do subscribe to my YouTube channel and support me both there and on social media, and come back again to watch more motorsport mysteries.